You're watching HQ Spotlight on CBS Sports Network. We are just 2 days away from the NBA draft, which also means, sadly, it is our final mock draft Monday. So we want to send it over to the experts, Adam Finkelstein and Kyle Boone, because Fink is showcasing his final mock draft. What's going on, fellas? Take it away.
Thanks so much, Jacqueline. Welcome into the show, everybody. Kyle Boone with me, and we are going to get going right away. And Boone, we're going to have some fun in this hour. You got some player comps. This is based on my mock draft. And this, I want to clarify this. This is Intel based. This is not what we would do. Obviously, number one, Cooper Flagg to the Dallas Mavericks, the no-brainer of the entire draft. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. The Mavs got lucky, had less than a 2% chance of pulling this one off, and they get a player who is the no-brainer, number one, extreme athlete, terrific two-way player, great defensive instincts, very good passer. And we saw some really notable strides this year with both his shooting and his self-creation. That's going to be really important in Dallas, especially with Kyrie Irving starting the season on the injury list. I think he's good enough to help them win right now, them meaning Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, but he's also going to build a bridge and be the future face of their franchise, setting them up to really rebuild in the midst of trying to contend. And there's suddenly a very long runway for Dallas to be good for the foreseeable future. All right, Boone, with the second pick in the draft, this one's equally easy. Who do you have the Spurs taking at number 2?
Yeah, it's going to be Dylan Harper for me at number 2 with the Spurs. This is a guy who reminds me a little bit of a jumbo Jalen Brunson, someone who has really good size, can be a playmaking on-ball creator, someone who I think for the Spurs can be kind of a driving force as an initiator on offense. And obviously, you're looking to add pieces around Victor Wembanyama. They already have De'Aaron Fox. They already have Stephon Castle. I think on paper, Fink, the fit is at least questionable, but I also believe that at number 2 in the draft, you don't really draft based off of need. You draft based off of talent. And at number 2, Harper is the clear second best prospect in this class behind Cooper Flagg. So I think they'll end up figuring out how to work in his skill set. And I think this would be a nice fit for San Antonio and for Dylan Harper both.
All right, now with the third pick, I think this is where the draft really begins. It gets interesting here. Ace Bailey canceled the workout in Philadelphia. I think just about everyone now has VJ Edgecombe being mocked to Philadelphia, but I've got something a little bit different. With the third pick, I am currently projecting them to take Trey Johnson out of Texas. And I want to be very clear, this is based on some of the intel I got over the weekend that Philadelphia likes Johnson a lot. There's still a chance they take Edgecombe, but Johnson from Texas has, I've been told, someone that Philadelphia has significant interest in. Remember, they are also shopping this pick. It is on the market for anyone who's interested. Johnson is a volume scorer, but one who did so with surprising efficiency this year at Texas. He made strides with his passing, was just, I think, more effective in that top option than we expected. We knew his counting stats were going to be good, but to do it with the shooting percentages he showed, I thought was really impressive. Boone, you have made the comp to Malik Monk, and I like that one quite a bit. Malik Monk was a little bit more of a vertical scorer in high school because of his burst and athleticism. I'm not sure Trey has that. I also thought Malik Monk was an underrated passer at this stage. I think Trey Johnson might be as well, too. So a little bit of a wrinkle in this mock draft because I do think Philadelphia has more interest in Trey Johnson than is typically being reported as we're about 48 hours outside of the draft. All right, Boone, I know that's a curveball. It's going to throw off the mock draft. Number 4, who do you have the Hornets going with here? I think this should be a pretty easy one if it falls this way.
Yeah, I agree with you here. It's going to be VJ Edgecombe, just because right now the markets do suggest Edgecombe may be the pick at number 3 for the 76ers. If Hornets have the board fall this way, I do think Edgecombe would be the pick. This is someone who was very productive in his one season at Baylor University, and this is someone who reminds me a little bit of Victor Oladipo, just in terms of an elite super athlete, two-way player, can play both on the ball as a defensive prospect, as a kind of a lead hound, and also can generate offense just with the way that he is so adept creating, attacking downhill, and also getting his own shot. So I think there's a lot to like here with VJ Edgecombe. There's a reason right now that a lot of people think he could be the number 3 pick in this draft. And if you're the Hornets, you already have LaMelo Ball, you already have Brandon Miller. Adding a VJ Edgecombe, who I think could be a great complementary piece, would be a tremendous value here for them at number 4.
Yeah, I agree. That's a no-brainer fit. In fact, I think there is a chance even that Charlotte can explore moving up for him. At number 5, we've got a really interesting scenario because it's the Utah Jazz. And I'm going to quote what someone told me yesterday. Remember, Ace Bailey not working out in Utah either. This is the way it was framed to me. What do you think the chances are that the Ainges, Danny Ainge and now Austin Ainge, are going to be bullied by Omar Cooper, meaning that they're going to pass on Ace Bailey if he is their guy? I'm not sure whether he's their guy or not. It makes for an interesting subplot, but I've got them taking Con Knipple here, and here's why. I think Knipple, outside of the top 2 picks in the draft, probably has the highest floor. He's incredibly skilled. He's very strong. He's a very smart player. One of the keys to acclimating quickly to the NBA is proving you can fit in with other good players and having less volume with the ball in your hands. I think Knipple is uniquely qualified to do that. Combine that with the defensive gains we saw him make this year at Duke, and I think he's a very safe pick. I've got him compared to Austin Reeves. I think he's got similar kind of upside, even though he's not an elite athlete. I think this could be a very good pick for Utah, but it's all in the background of what they do to Ace Bailey. And of course, Boone, that leads us to number 6, the Washington Wizards. Is this as far as Bailey's going to fall? What do you think?
On draft night, I think it's possible he could slip farther, but we're going to stop the slide here and take him at number 6 for the Wizards. Look, Ace Bailey is a guy who, I think there's pretty clear weaknesses in his game. I'd like to see him improve defensively. I'd like to see him be able to be more of a playmaker on the ball as opposed to being kind of a black hole and someone who's a high volume shooter. But look, Washington Wizards, number 6, I think this is tremendous value. Someone who is a very, very good prospect. I think he can be an all-star scorer in this league. Look back to the month of January, Fink. He scored 39 points versus Indiana, 37 points versus Northwestern, 30 points versus Penn State. I think the eye test tells you if things click for him, and it's not a guarantee, certainly, but I think if things click for him in the NBA, he could be a superstar. You don't get that type of bet at number 6 in most drafts, so I think the Wizards would take the gamble here at number 6.
All right, very interesting. At number 7, we've got the Pelicans, and if you read that mock draft, you will see I have reported that the Pelicans, I think, are interested in trading up. I think they would like to get either Ace Bailey or Trey Johnson. They've got multiple picks now that they can try and package. If they stand pat, I think Jeremiah Fears could very possibly be the guy. We are talking about a dynamic creator who exceeded all expectations this year at Oklahoma. He reclassified up late, which is usually not a successful pathway, but he defied history by playing as well as he did for as long as he did. Led Oklahoma back to the NCAA tournament. Scouts love his burst, his ability to get into the paint on demand. The fact that his frame is now starting to evolve at a rapid rate. The shooting and the defense, they're concerns, but I think the biggest concern is whether or not he can adapt to less volume in his hands. Now, Boone, you've got the De'Aaron Fox comp. I'm not sure that that's like, you've got a higher grade on him, I think, than I do, that upside. I'm going to give you really quickly the chance to justify the De'Aaron Fox comp.
Yeah, Fink, actually, I'm going to pull my phone up, and I need to phone a friend here because the De'Aaron Fox comp, I think I need to phone it in. Like, I understand maybe the on-ball presence that he brings with De'Aaron Fox. I couldn't come up with a true comparison for Jeremiah Fears, someone who's really electric as a ball handler, as a playmaker with the ball in his hands. He had a huge usage rate, top 10 in all college basketball last season as a true freshman, but he's not the same defender that De'Aaron Fox is. I'll throw it back to you real quick. Do you have someone that comes to mind when you think of Jeremiah Fears? Because the comparisons, I ran through a number of potential starting point guards. It's really hard to compare his game to someone else in the NBA right now.
I went Monta Ellis, a little bit of a throwback there, but that's the best one I could come up with. I agree with you. There's not a great comp. It's part of the reason why I'm not as high on him as others, but I digress. One guy I am high on, I'm going to turn it over to you. I've got the Nets selecting Kaman Malawach, a player who I think is rising in this draft. What do you think about the big fella from Duke?
I love him. Yeah, this is someone who actually began playing basketball at 13 years old, actually fell in love first with soccer He was walking back home from playing soccer one day. A basketball coach saw him walking on the side of the road and said, "Hey, look, you're too big to be playing soccer. You need to play basketball." And that's essentially what kickstarted his basketball career. He's long, he's rangy, he's 7 foot tall, he's got a 7 foot plus wingspan. Reminds me of Mitchell Robinson in the way that he can disrupt games with his size and with his defense. Still very much raw as a prospect. He's not much of a shooter at this point. I think he needs to grow in that area. I think we saw some flashes during his time at Duke where he can be an anchor for your defensive side of the ball. And I really like this kid. This is someone who has drawn rave reviews during the interview process. Duke players and coaches seem to really like him. So I think at number 9, someone who I think can be a plug and play type center for a long time in the future. Kaman Malowich, someone to keep an eye on here.
All right, a look back at the first 8 picks in today's mock draft. Again, this is based on the Intel Cooper prize to the Sixers. VJ Edgecombe falls to the Hornets at 4. That would be great news in Charlotte. Utah takes Con Knipple. Washington gets Ace Bailey, a big win for them. New Orleans with Jeremiah Fears. And then the Nets take Kaman Malowich. You're not going to want we are going to wrap up this lottery, and somebody else has the number 10 pick. Why? Because Kevin Durant, one of the all-time greats, got traded yesterday, and that means he's going to Houston, and the Rockets are sending their pick over to Phoenix. Don't go anywhere. We've got the rest of the lottery coming up next. Welcome back to Mock Draft Monday. I'm Adam Finkelstein. He's Kyle Boone, and we are breaking down my latest mock draft now, just about 48 hours before the lottery will begin on Wednesday. Again, this mock draft is based on the intel and not necessarily on what I would do. With the 9th pick, the Toronto Raptors are on the board, and I think in this scenario, Kasparas Jakučionis could be the guy. I think they would have significant interest in Kaman Malowich if he were still available. He checks a number of boxes for them, but in this scenario, he's off the board, and instead, I think they will pivot to an opportunity to solidify their backcourt. Jakučionis' highest ceiling is as a big point guard with an excellent feel for the game and more shooting potential than the numbers displayed this year at Illinois, but I think he's also got potential to play off the ball as well. He's got enough size, and he could be a great connector, play off the advantage that a more dynamic athlete could create. The bottom line, he's got a lot of versatility and could fit in a lot of schemes and a lot of different rotations for the Raptors. Boone, we're going to go over to you with the number 10 pick. And as we said, this one is a change. So on draft night, Adam Silver's going to get up there and say the Houston Rockets are going to make the pick, but that's because the Kevin Durant deal won't be official until after draft night. They are in fact choosing for the Phoenix Suns as part of that deal that sent KD to the Rockets. Now, I went with Colin Murray-Boyles here. Tell me if you like this fit. Tell me what you like or don't like about CMB.
Yeah, I think this is fine at number 10 for the Phoenix Suns, taking Colin Murray-Boyles. He is a bit of a throwback big man, kind of a tweener in today's NBA. He's really good defensively, Fink, as you know. He's got grown man strength. In terms of his versatility on defense, there's a lot to like. You know, he's 6'6", which is a little bit undersized for maybe a true power forward. Has got a good wingspan at 7 foot. Not really a shooter at this point. I think at number 10, if I'm the Phoenix Suns, obviously I'm hitting the reset button. After trading Kevin Durant, I think I would look hard at a Carter Bryant or even a Noah Singwe at this point in the draft, trying to swing big, swing for the fences. Murray-Boyles, though, I think you could do worse. Like, this is a guy who I think is going to be very confident as a potential rotation player, even a starter long-term in the NBA at the forward spot. I think Phoenix is not going to be able to return things around in 1 year. So, yeah, I think you could do worse than Murray-Boyles at number 10 here.
All right, you mentioned Carter Bryant, and I think that's an appropriate segue into the next pick because he was the player that I had mocked Houston to take if they kept that pick. I'd mocked that for over a month. I thought that was both logical and where the intel was pointed. But now that pick is headed over to Houston, Houston desperately needs front court help. I think that could leave Carter Bryant on the board, and I do not think Portland will let him slip anymore. There's a chance that Toronto could look into him at 9, but if he's on the board at 11, I'm told that the Blazers would be very enthusiastic about adding him. Now, the talking point is going to be the fact that he only scored 6 points and grabbed 4 rebounds per game at Arizona. So why is he become such a coveted NBA draft pick? Well, it's because he shot 46% on open catch and shoot threes, and a 6'7" wing. He guarded essentially all 5 positions on the floor for Arizona last year. That not just switching, but there were times when they just matched him up with opposing point guards. That gives him an immediate and tangible role in the NBA. There's not a whole lot of 3-and-D prospects in this draft. Portland's got to retool that backcourt a little bit. Carter Bryant fits in and checks all those boxes. I think this could make a lot of sense for the Blazers. All right, let's keep it moving here. At number 12, you just mentioned this guy, Boone. I've got Noah Esingwe to the Bulls. You think he could be off the board earlier. I think we both agree he's got a significant upside, but maybe a bit of a swing. Tell me what you think about the fit with Chicago.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting. This is definitely a swing prospect. You know, someone who I think could end up going top 10 on draft night. We shouldn't be totally surprised. He's 18 years old. He's from France. He's very toolsy, Fink. A lot of range, a lot of athleticism. He has some shooting potential. I think for the Chicago Bulls, look like they have a pretty young and exciting young core there. Obviously, they hit on, I believe, Modest Buzelis. They've got some young pieces in Kobe White. Adding some pieces around him. I think Esingwe could be a big type of wing who could add some potential star power in the future. And I think with his scoring, could even add some upside early in his NBA career as well.
All right, with the 13th pick, we're going to go over to the Atlanta Hawks. And I think the center spot, seems like they've drafted for this spot repeatedly over the years. Of course, not as recently when they've been focused on the wings, but still don't have a long-term solution. And if they are going to build around Trae Young, I think finding him a lob partner could be a top priority. And to that end, I've got them taking Jean Beringa from France. And this guy is a 7-footer, an extreme athlete. He's one of the younger prospects in this draft, but he has a world of athletic upside. Wouldn't expect him to be able to slide right into the starting role next season, but I don't think that's necessarily needed. I do think he could grow into their center of the future. He comes from that archetype where he's an extreme lob threat. You see that block right there. That's what he does, almost hitting his head on the rim. He can change ends of the floor, and he's also got good hands, which I think is really important. Only 18 years old, only been playing the game for a few years. Significant upside, and comes from an archetype that I think is really valued in today's NBA. All right, with the 14th pick, the Spurs are on the board. And Boone, before I kick it to you here, I want to talk about something that I mentioned in the mock. My intel over the weekend was that the Spurs are hoping to target a big man here. They had Kaman Malawach in for a second workout. That doesn't happen unless they are looking to move up in this draft. So while there's been a lot of speculation about maybe they would try and trade 2, it sounds like they're trying to move up and pair Dylan Harper with someone like Malawach. Why would they do that? Because reportedly, Wemby's not crazy about playing the 5. If they can't trade up and Beringa's off the board, I think then, and possibly only then, they would go to the wing. I've got them taking Cedric Coward. What do you think about that?
I think this is a fine pick. Look, I'd be fine even reaching for Asa Newell from Georgia as well. A big lob threat, someone who I think can be a really good defensive prospect in the NBA. Coward's just a fine prospect here, though. You know, he's 6'5", 7'2" wingspan, one of the biggest risers during the NBA draft process, Fink, as you know. A career 39% three-point shooter. Began his career at the Division III level. There's a story on CBSSports.com from Matt Norlander on Coward's rise and his journey to where he's at right now. I think there's probably a little debate on his actual upside, but I think the floor case for Coward, Fink, is someone who's going to be a really good rotational wing. He can space the floor, good size, good length. I think he can be a plus defender at the NBA. So there's a lot to like here for the Spurs, and obviously getting Dylan Harper early in this draft, adding Coward again, I think that would be a great haul for the San Antonio Spurs.
All right, a look back at picks 9 through 14 here as we wrap up the lottery. The Raptors take Kasparas Yakachonis. The Suns take Colin Murray-Boyles. Blazers get Carter Bryant. Bulls, Noah Esingwe. Hawks, Jean Beringa. And the Spurs, Cedric Coward. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back with the rest of the first round. Welcome back to Mock Draft Monday here, where we are breaking down my latest mock draft ahead of Wednesday's NBA draft lottery that starts in almost 48 hours from now. All right, we're jumping right into the 15th pick, so the lottery is over, and one guy who slipped in this scenario is Derek Queen. Now, the national champs, the Oklahoma City Thunder, are on the board, and Boone, I think they would grab Derek Queen here. That's not to say I think he's a great fit for them, but I do think he's the best asset on the board, and when you have the limited number of roster spots they have, they could take him, they could move him, and punt this asset down the road. We're talking about one of the most skilled bigs in the draft. He's a great handler, passer, and playmaker from the front court. I think he's got some of the best hands in this draft. What would you think about this scenario, Boone, where OKC would take him and then theoretically move him to the highest bidder for future draft assets?
Yeah, I'm getting some deja vu as you're talking about that, Fink, because you'll go back a few years in the draft. Oklahoma City Thunder actually drafted Alperen Sengun, one of the best playmaking bigs in that draft, traded him to the Houston Rockets. And, I think in hindsight, probably the Thunder would prefer to have a Sengun based off of what they ended up trading out for. So I would not love this. I think Queen is a top 10 prospect in this class. I think he's a great playmaking big. I actually think he would fit very well on this Thunder team. Now, OKC is going to have a roster crunch. They're going to have to figure that out in the offseason. But, I think a Queen is a guy who they want to add to their front court depth. They want to add someone who fits what they're looking for in terms of size, playmaking, eventual shooting. I think Queen checks a lot of boxes. So, yeah, I think this is a good pick. I hope that if they do make this pick, they keep it.
The box he doesn't check? Defense. I'm just saying, that's how they won the chip. I'm just not sure he fits, but we shall see. All right, with the 16th pick, I've got Liam McNeely coming off the board. He would go to the Memphis Grizzlies here as part of the Desmond Bane trade, one of two huge blockbuster deals we've seen just in the last week alone. Liam McNeely here, Boone. What do you like? What do you not like about this selection?
Yeah, I think we both love Liam McNeely. He's a power wing, played at UConn last season as a 5-star prospect, and really selfless with the way that he plays. Going back to his time in high school at Montverde, this is someone who is a winner at every single level. He brings energy, he brings size. I think there's scoring potential, shooting potential that he did not showcase at UConn at the college level. So, this is a guy who I think is a potential lottery pick who ends up going outside the lottery. This is really good value, I think.
All right, I think McNeely's range begins at 14 and it ends with Utah. But with the 17th pick, now everybody thinks that the Timberwolves are going to look for a big guy here. And it makes sense. Rudy Gobert, he's not getting any younger. They've got some free agents up there. But I think they need a connector. They need a passer. They've got scoring guards, not just Anthony Edwards, but Rob Dillingham. And you know what? I think they can check both boxes. Yegor Dem and Boone, everybody calls him a point guard. This guy is 6'9". He's 6'9", and he's the best passer in this draft. He doesn't need to play the point. In fact, he can't guard an NBA point guard. So you better pair him next to two guards. And I think he could be terrific as a facilitator, as a ball mover, alongside those potent scorers Minnesota has in their backcourt. So this is a little bit of a curveball, but I think it could make a lot of sense for the Wolves to build out their versatility, find a multi-positional guy, and what I believe is the very best passer in the entire draft. All right, that brings us to number 18, where the Washington Wizards are on the board. I think Asa Newell, he was the choice here in my mock draft. You brought him up as someone you would consider taking even earlier in this draft. So I assume you like this pick for the Wizards.
I do, yeah. And I think his range is probably starting a little bit earlier in this draft, somewhere between like 15 and 25. So this is a sweet spot here for Newell. I think both of us have a lot of confidence in projecting Newell. Former 5-star recruit, McDonald's All-American, big size, a big lob threat, someone who can be a punisher on defense. And, I think answered a lot of questions last season, playing with the competitive edge, playing with some physicality. There's a lot to like here. I think as he builds his frame, really develops his game, he's going to be a starting level center. And I think at this point in the draft, that's really hard to get a starting level anything. I like the value here for the Wizards.
All right, with the 19th pick here, Brooklyn Nets are back on the board, and I think they're going to do the exact opposite of what they did in the lottery. If they pick a guard in the lottery, I think they will take a big here. Because I have them taking Malawach in the lottery, I've got them taking a guard here, and that is Nolan Traore. And Boone, you know this. I am high on Traore. I think that We have slept on him a little bit, came into this draft cycle as a top 5 prospect, and then quite frankly, he regressed a little bit, or at least the perception of his stock did during his season. But he got rehabilitated down the stretch of that year because he showed the same burst as a playmaker, tons of creativity, tons of paint touches, but there were definite gains in his shooting ability. He's got solid size at the point, and I think this is the type of creator who Brooklyn could really invest in. We've seen the virtues of their player development program over the years. Nolan Traore is a guard that's got a high upside, and as you said, a chance to get a potential starter. He's pretty good. Let's take a look back at 15 through 19. We've got Derek Queen to the OKC and then maybe to somebody else. Liam McNeely to the Grizzlies at 16. Yegor Demon to the Wolves at 17. Asa Newell to the Wizards at 18. And Nolan Traore to the Nets at 19. Don't go anywhere. We're going to wrap up this first round coming up next. This is Mock Draft Monday, where we are looking ahead to Wednesday's NBA draft. We are jumping back in with the 20th pick overall. Now, Boone, I've got the Miami Heat taking Walter Clayton Jr., and here's why. Because he's had 2 workouts with Miami, and you know what he did next? He canceled scheduled workouts for later in the first round. Now, I'm not saying he has a promise, but he must feel pretty darn good about his chances to go in the top 25. Tell me what you like, what you don't like about Walter Clayton Jr. and the fit in Miami.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, I do love Walter Clayton Jr. as a prospect, someone we have as a top 20 player in this class. Reminds me a little bit of Seth Curry, right? Just a shooting specialist, someone who I think in the NBA can be a microwavable bucket. And he also showed some versatility at Florida, not just with his shooting, which he certainly can do. He's great off catch and shoot, great off screens, great off dribble jumpers, but he also showed he can be a true point guard at the college level at least. And I think there's some on-off ball versatility projecting him to the NBA level as well. There is a lot to like here with Walter Clayton Jr. I think at number 20, Miami is trying to upgrade its offense. Clayton could absolutely do that just with his ability to shoot it, play on and off the ball, do a number of different things on offense.
All right, with the 21st pick, the Jazz are on the board, and Boone, I am told they are making efforts to move up, not necessarily to target any specific player, although they definitely have interest in Liam McNeely, but because they think there is a tier break and they don't necessarily like where they sit at 21. If things go according, if things are, if there is no trade, I think Nick Clifford is someone that they could invest in. The other thing I've been told here is that Austin Ainge will not be held to former draft picks. If he doesn't like who they took in the lottery in recent years, he's not going to have to draft around them. Nick Clifford gives them a versatile wing. He's an athlete. He's a defender. He's a passer. He's a cutter. And if the shooting gains we saw at Colorado State prove to be sustainable, he's a 3-and-D NBA wing with some added attributes with that passing, cutting, and athleticism. All right, let's keep it moving here, Boone. One of your personal favorites I've got coming off the board, number 22, the Atlanta Hawks are taking Will Riley, and you like Will Riley. Tell us why.
I do. I like Will Riley a lot. I think he was hiding in plain sight last season at the University of Illinois. Someone who, actually reclassified late, still a very young prospect, playing as a true freshman at Illinois last season. You can see the pictures here, some of the highlight reels from last season. He's very thin. It clearly looks like he reclassified up to play college basketball, but the skill set is there, the frame is there. Someone who I think can be a wing scorer in the NBA. This is a big swing, I think, for someone taking him in the 20s. And obviously, if you're picking in this range of the draft, it is kind of a crapshoot. I think Riley, in a couple of years, could turn out to be a very useful NBA prospect.
All right, at 23, the New Orleans Pelicans are on the board, and Joe Dumars is making the pick. Now, Dumars says they are going to build around Zion Williamson. Whether or not that proves to be true or whether he's just saying that to hold his trade stock, only time will tell. But I've got him taking Danny Wolf here, and I like this pick for a couple of reasons. You're talking about a near 7-footer who's highly, highly skilled, specifically as a ball handler and a passer. Now, he's got terrific hands, terrific touch, and when you're that skilled, there's a lot of optimism about what he could develop into as a shooter. I think that would make him not only a good fit next to Zion Williamson, but also a good fit alongside Yves Missy, who was last year's first-round pick and clearly a part of their future given the season he just had. So Danny Wolf, to me, would make a lot of sense in this pick, but I will tell you one other thing. I don't think if Walter Clayton is on the board, he gets past the Pelicans. I think this is his floor at this point. That would move us over to number 24, and Boone, the Thunder are back on the board because, let's face it, they need more assets. Not really. I've got them taking Thomas Sorber. Remember, I had him taking Derek Queen and then moving him for future assets, so we're not necessarily duplicating on the bigs, but Sorber would be the pick for OKC. Tell me what you like or don't like about this fit.
I like it a lot, and I feel like if OKC were to take him at number 15 instead of number 24, I'd be totally fine with this too. This is a guy who checked a lot of boxes at the NBA Draft Combine, measured extremely well, has had a really strong pre-draft process, and I think has flying under the radar because he played at Georgetown, kind of toiled away in obscurity last season. He was very productive in his one season at college. There's a lot of buzz around Thomas Sorber. There's a lot of teams looking for bigs who are very interested in him earlier in this spot in the draft. And I think at number 24, this would be tremendous value, again, for the Oklahoma City Thunder.
All right, let's take a look back at the last 5 picks here as we count down the first round. At number 20, Walter Clayton to the Miami Heat. At 21, Nick Clifford to the Utah Jazz. 22, Will Riley to the Atlanta Hawks. 23, Danny Wolf to the New Orleans Pelicans. At number 24, Thomas Sorber to the OKC Thunder. We wrap up the final 6 picks of the first round on Monday's mock draft. Coming up next. Welcome back to Mock Draft Monday. The NBA draft just 2 days away, and we are counting down the first round with the 25th pick. The Orlando Magic take Jace Richardson. Richardson out of Michigan State, measured in smaller than expected, and I think that has undoubtedly affected his stock. Did not get the green room invitation, but nonetheless had a terrific freshman season for the Spartans, and I think given the Magic's recent trade could really help address their backcourt depth. He's a southpaw with on-off ball versatility. There is the ability to score at multiple ranges and efficiency while doing so. He's got a terrific acumen for the game, and as he builds up his body and gets stronger, his impact is only going to grow. This could definitely help the Magic's backcourt depth. All right, with the 26th pick, Brooklyn back on the board, Boone, and I've got him taking Noah Penda from France. Do you like this pick for the Nets?
Yeah, I think this is a great pick for the Nets, especially because if Brooklyn does hang on to their 4 first-round picks, Penda feels like a really big swing. He's a big wing from France. It checks a lot of boxes just in terms of his physicality and his physical profile. Good defender overseas from France. Plays with a lot of energy. I think this is a guy who in a couple years we could look up and is one of the better prospects performing as a potential lottery pick from this year's class. I don't think he's ready to contribute right away in the NBA, but obviously the Nets are in no rush to rebuild, so maybe they draft and stash him, develop him over the next couple of years. I think there's worse things you could do with the number 26 pick in the draft.
All right, 27, it is still Brooklyn, the 4th pick for the Nets here in the first round, and I've got them going with Maxime Renaud from Stanford. And to be honest, I think that Ryan Kalkbrenner would definitely be an option here, but in this scenario, they took Kaman Malawach. They would not take Malawach and Kalkbrenner. Renaud would be a better fit because of his skill set, a 7-footer who shot 45% on unguarded catch-and-shoot threes. He can really put the ball on the floor as well. He's a solid athlete for his size. So his offensive profile is very intriguing. He also got over 10 rebounds per game. Take a look at what the Nets draft would look like with Malawach, Traore, Penda, and Renaud getting talent across the lineup, really ideally solidifying the front court or the future, and then getting a lead guard with a ton of playmaking ability. You find a shooter to throw in with that, and it's a really nice draft, I think, for the Nets. All right, Boone, at number 29, this is an interesting one here. You've got Drake. 28. I skipped one. I got so excited, and you're going to know why in a minute. 28, the Boston Celtics. They take Ryan Kalkbrenner. Break this one down for me.
Yeah, I will take Kalkbrenner at number 28 over a Maxime Renaud. I think Kalkbrenner is a sleeper hiding in plain sight. He's a 7-footer, tremendous defensive prospect who was a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year in the Big East at Creighton. Played 5 years in college, and so yeah, I think there's probably some shine off of him because he is an older prospect, but you're talking about a 23-year-old who has tremendous experience already, can step in, I think, for a situation with the Celtics and be a potential day one contributor. There's not a lot of players in this range who you can say that about. I think Kalkbrenner, you can absolutely feel confident he could be a contributor very early in his career.
All right, now this is why I jumped the gun, everybody. At 29, I've got the Suns taking Drake Powell. Kyle Boone has compared Drake Powell to Jaylen Brown. That's right. The 2025 NBA Finals MVP is the equivalent of the 29th pick in the 2025 NBA Draft. Boone, all I have to say is what say you?
Hey, look, not every comparison is a direct comparison. I think there's shades of Jaylen Brown that I see in Drake Powell. And, I think the comparison mostly stops there. He's a really good defender. We saw at North Carolina, he was very good generating pressure on the ball, being a true defensive playmaker. He was 81st percentile as a true freshman on catch and shoot opportunities, 84th percentile finishing at the rim. And I wrote a story on CBS Sports Today highlighting Drake Powell, just essentially saying, this is a guy who has 5-star credentials. He really struggled at North Carolina. The situation wasn't good. The fit wasn't good. North Carolina wasn't particularly good. I think in a new situation, Fink, for Drake Powell, he could really rejuvenate his prospects and really live up to the 5-star credentials that we expect. I don't know if he's going to be a Jaylen Brown. It's very unlikely, actually. But, just in terms of the size, the wing, the shooting ability, the defense, there's a lot to like here with Drake Powell, and I can see some shades of Jaylen Brown.
Everyone should have somebody love them like you love Jaylen Brown. With the 30th pick and final pick in the first round, LA Clippers, I've got him taking Hugo Gonzalez, big, strong, physical wing. Boone, can he step right into the lineup and play immediate minutes for the Clippers?
I don't think so. I think the size is really interesting. I was actually watching some Hugo Gonzalez earlier, and I wouldn't totally rule it out. I think he is still a little bit green, still a little bit young. But just in terms of his energy, his effort level that I've seen watching him overseas, I think it's really impressive. His shooting profile is something that in particularly interests me. And I think there's a lot of interest and opinions from NBA teams in terms of where he could go on draft night. He could go as high as the early 20s, but I don't feel confident projecting him to be an early contributor in the NBA. That's really, really hard to do, even given his profile having produced professionally overseas.
The shooting's going to have to come, no doubt about it. I still think the Clippers might take him at 30. Let's take a look back at 25 through 30, the final 6 picks in the first round. That means guaranteed contracts, folks. Jace Richardson to the Magic at 25, Noah Penda and Maxime Renaud to the Nets at 26-27. Ryan Kalkbrenner to the Celtics, giving them that front court depth they need at 28. Drake Powell, otherwise known as Jaylen Brown, to the Suns at 29. And then Hugo Gonzalez wrapping up the first round to the Clippers. Coming up next, we've got some major takeaways from this NBA draft. You're not going to want to go anywhere. We'll see you in just a minute.
All right, back here on HQ Spotlight with Adam and Kyle. Gentlemen, we just, saw the entire final mock draft Monday here on Spotlight. Want to ask you about your biggest takeaways. Fink, I will start with you. Your biggest takeaways from your final mock that we just went through here on Spotlight.
Well, first and foremost, that you should host the show from now on. It's just a whole lot easier when I'm beyond that, I want to talk about, I think, the importance of trades in the next 48 hours. We've already seen Desmond Bane, Kevin Durant being moved. The number 10 and 16 picks have gone in those trades. I think there's a chance for more. Everybody's talked about whether or not the Spurs will deal. I do not expect they will. However, I think there's a chance that Philadelphia explores moving down in the next 48 hours. I think there's a chance that Charlotte, Utah, New Orleans, and maybe even Washington explore moving up in various capacities. So I think this trade theme that we've seen in the last week could only continue. It's going to make for a very exciting few days leading up to Wednesday's, the beginning of the lottery.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, Fink, the mystery of the draft is still just kind of looming. We're 48 hours away from the draft, and We've got Philly picking at number 3. We have no idea what they're going to do. People think it may be VJ Edgecombe. You have mocked Trey Johnson. I don't think we should rule out Ace Bailey at number 3. Philly's a total wild card. They hold the keys to the draft. Everyone expects Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper to go 1-2 in that order. Number 3 is where things are going to go haywire, and we don't know exactly what that front office is going to do, but looking forward to see what they do over the next couple of days. Second and final takeaway here on Mock Draft Monday is, what does OKC do? We talked about trades. They have picks 15 and 24 in the first round. We've already talked about the roster crunch that they have. I can't imagine that they keep all of these picks, and yet 15 and 24, very premium picks in this draft. This is a deep class, so again, there should be, and I expect there will be, some movement here over the next couple of days. Wouldn't be surprised to see if OKC is among the teams that are jockeying either up and down for draft positioning.
All right, so Kyle says maybe the uncertainty of the draft is still kind of looming over us. So with that in mind, Adam, give us like your biggest bold prediction for maybe some of those moves or some of those trades, or what you think we could see that would have a real wow factor here. In the spirit of our final Mock Draft Monday, like, take us out with the punch.
All right, well, I think the San Antonio Spurs are going to try and acquire a center. Now, that is bold because they already have Wemby on their team. But as I alluded to in this mock, I think Wemby is very interested in playing the 4. When you have a generational player on your team and he says he wants to play the 4, you try and accommodate that generational player. So I think they will explore trying to trade up to get Kaman Malawach. They recently had him in for his second workout. His agent would not have allowed that unless he thought there was a chance they move up. If not, if they're at 14, they would hope to see someone like Berija or someone else who could convince Wemby that he is the 4-man moving forward, at least at times. That's as bold as I got for you here, Jacqueline.
All right, I'll go a little hotter here. I think the Utah Jazz, picking at 5 and 21, have something up their sleeve. Austin Ainge is taking over that front office. They've got some assets on that roster. They've got plenty of draft assets. I think they want to make a splash here. They want to try and send a statement. This is a very quality draft, particularly at the top. If they want to move up, and I think they do want to move up, there will eventually be a team that is willing to accommodate, and I think the Jazz end up making a splash on draft night.
Adam, Kyle, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so much for all your work, guys. Every single Mock Draft Monday. Again, that was the final one here on Spotlight. For more draft talk, make sure you check out the Eye on College Basketball podcast with Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code. And that does it for Spotlight. Thanks so much for watching, folks. We'll see you next time.